Welcome, welcome. So as always, I will begin today by casting sacred space. I'm going to light a candle with the flame representing spiritual transformation, alchemical transformation. And I'll light some cedar. And cedar is not as popularly known as sage typically is, as a smudging and cleansing tool. But many temples and many spiritual places, religious places, use cedar to actually build doorways and arches because cedar is known for its protection, its cleansing properties. So I'm just clearing the space, just clearing my energy field. So today is the final day of our chakra series. This has just been so much fun talking with you all about these topics and just sharing my own intuitive messages of what I feel is important at this time as we experience this massive shift in our society. So thank you so much for tuning in with me and listening and holding space not only for yourselves, but for each other. So as I've said before, the chakra system is an energy system in our body. I'm specifically talking about the 7 chakras that are kind of stacked along the spine. The root chakra begins down at the base of our spine, and these 7 chakras rise up through the colors of light of the rainbow up to the crown chakra. And the crown chakra is just such a beautiful space. It is this space of expansion, and it can really be whatever you want it to be. It is this level of just conscious awareness and kind of returning to our true nature. So we want our chakras to be balanced and cleansed, so that we can live a life of vitality, so that we can live, in a conscious, we can live in conscious interaction with energy, with, the manifest world. And we're going to really get into that today when we talk about what consciousness is. So before we dive into the intuitive message of today's chakra, let's just do a little bit of pranayama and mindfulness to just drop into our bodies so that we can learn and experience from our highest space, from our highest self. So close your eyes, sit up nice and tall, lengthening the spine. Take an exhale through the mouth, a deep inhale through your nose, and a big exhale. And just seal your lips, continue to breathe in and out through your nose. Through this mindful breath, we activate Ujjayi Pranayama. This breath soothes the nervous system. It activates our chakras so that we can experience from a space of conscious awareness. And as you breathe, I want you to look into the third eye space, into the center of your mind. This is where the third eye chakra resides. We went over this yesterday. We reach into our crown chakra by moving into this space first. So look into the center of your mind without straining your eyes. Just gently look between the eyebrows. And then begin to look up toward the crown of your head. It's believed that if we were able to stand in our third eye chakra and look up toward the crown chakra, that we would see 10,000 lotus petals. We would see just this unfolding of energy, a huge infinite mandala of cosmic awareness. So imagine this space. Imagine a bright, vibrant light, all the colors of the rainbow shining through the crown of your head. And as you breathe into this space, it expands. You feel your mind open as you become a part of all that is around you. You activate all that is within you, and you draw it up through the crown of the head. Looking up toward consciousness. And then reach your hands up and over your head so the palms touch, and then draw your hands down into the heart space, into our heart chakra. From this space of loving awareness, let's sing the sound of Om together. This sound reminds us that we are all connected, we are all one. Inhale. And let your eyes gently flutter open. And welcome everyone to Sacred Space. Okay, so the crown chakra, it's the color of this chakra, so it's at the crown of our head. Imagine a lotus flower just blossoming open here. It is displayed many times as a violet light, so just like a really light purple. However, I've also seen the crown chakra as the full spectrum of light. So the idea that all of the other chakras and all of this light kind of moves up to the crown chakra and just illuminates like a rainbow. Kind of like those pyramids, like you see it in Pink Floyd's, band, like their album cover. You see the light coming in one side and then illuminating this just rainbow and spectrum of light on the other. That's how I visualize the crown chakra. And the element of this chakra is thought. All right, so a very esoteric energy and element here. We can't touch it. We can't really even see it. It is the element of thought and like the non-stuff of our world, which is what we'll get into today. The development of this chakra is in our adulthood. So this is where we really kind of move into more of a mature place. We talked about how the third eye opens during adolescence. This is where we really start thinking for ourselves, and we kind of rebel maybe against the narratives that we've been spoon-fed our whole life. And so the crown chakra is another layer to this. It's kind of the more mature side where, it's like, okay, I understand and I see, and what wisdom can I gain from all of this, and where is it taking me? And the crown chakra really adds another layer of understanding. And the anatomical connection to the crown chakra, of course, is the top of our brain and our brain function. Okay, so both the third eye and the crown chakra are associated with our brains. They're both just kind of associated with different parts of our brain. So the crown chakra is very much involved in our higher states of thinking, our higher states of awareness. It's also connected to our skeletal system and our muscular system. So kind of these like big picture parts of ourselves. Our skin is a part of our crown chakra. And then the pineal gland. So yesterday we talked about the pituitary gland, which is essential for oxytocin and spiritual development. And then we also have the pineal gland, which is also a really important gland for our spiritual development. This gland is connected to melatonin and the sleep world, which is also known as the cosmos of consciousness. It's also what encourages our spiritual awakening. And science has proven that the pineal gland has the highest concentrate of energy in our body, which I just find so incredible because our body is already this just powerhouse of energy and light and vibration. And to know that the pineal gland, this tiny little gland in the center of our brain, contains more energy than our entire body, that is just so incredible, right? So that alone kind of speaks for itself with, how powerful we are and how much divine force is really coursing through us. So the intuitive message of the crown chakra is consciousness. So we've done so much work already moving through all of the chakras of, kind of identifying our reliance and our security, looking into our relationships and the intimacy that we have in our lives, how intimately we are looking into our lives and how intimately we are involved with our lives. This is all very important when it comes to conscious awareness. We talked about spiritual sovereignty and our ability to claim what is rightfully ours from a space of sovereignty, right? From this belief that we have a right to be here, to experience freely without being manipulated or controlled from external sources. We looked into our heart chakra and remembered the message of compassion and love, and to treat the entire world with this loving awareness. We looked into our throat chakra and aligned our will with God consciousness, with this idea that we are all connected, that we are all kind of operating on this quantum level of divinity and spiritual laws. And then we rose up into our third eye, which is where we really begin to ask questions that lead us to this space of consciousness. We start to think for ourselves, we start to dig a little bit deeper, follow the white rabbit, or, and we just naturally attract messages and philosophies into our lives and experiences that really all lead to the same place, this place of consciousness. So we've heard, and maybe you all have all heard different things about consciousness. Many different spiritual communities talk about consciousness in different ways. There's really a lot of information about what consciousness is, because consciousness is essentially everything. Consciousness exists within and around everything. So there's really a lot to be said about it, and there's also not a lot to be said about it. It's really everything and nothing at the same time. As I said, it's a very esoteric concept. It is in the element of thought. So in the most, simple way, how I understand consciousness is that consciousness is the non-stuff. There is no ego attached to consciousness. There is no material or anything that we can really hold in our hand and identify within the realm of consciousness. Consciousness is complete detachment from the ego and from stories and fear. So one example of consciousness, we can look into quantum physics. And in string theory and quantum physics, this is the idea that if you take a proton and you divide it down to 1,000th of its size, and you start looking at these protons, at a certain level in science, they become unpredictable. So this is where Albert Einstein says that at a certain point, every scientist becomes a mystic, because spirituality and science, when taken to a certain point, merge and become the same thing. And and according to Albert Einstein, that's when our world will really find peace, and when we'll really truly evolve, is when we understand this connection between science and spirituality. And Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, who is my favorite guru of the Indian philosophy, he came to the United States in the early 1900s talking about spiritual science. He really approached the concept of consciousness and yoga and meditation from a place of science. Venus, come here. Sorry, my cat needs my attention. Come here. Okay, so, and I loved his perspective, right? Because we were back in the 1920s when Yogananda came to the United States and started talking about spiritual consciousness and spirit science. He really, he was attending religious liberal events, and we were all ready to kind of open our minds up to these ideas that, we are more than just our physical body, and that there's more going on within our brains and in the chemicals in our body. And Yogananda really talked about how our brain and our spine are these direct connections to God consciousness, and kind of higher realms of awareness or higher dimensions. So returning back to string theory, these scientists, the idea is that they took a microscope and they looked at these photons, and just divided them and zoomed in and zoomed in and zoomed into a place where the laws of physics stopped applying. And what they thought that a proton should do according to the laws of physics, it started doing all these different things. And what they found is that each scientist looked into this telescope, saw different things depending on what they expected to see. They found that their intention is what was guiding these protons. Rather than the laws of physics and these laws that we feel like the whole world is abiding by, they found that every proton was just interacting in a way that they were predicting and controlling with their own minds. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that we have this power on a quantum level to manifest whatever it is that we want in this world, and this is our interaction with consciousness. Consciousness is the non-stuff. It's the space between. So if we look into an atom, at the very center of it, there is empty space. Right? So there's this place that isn't really determined or dictated by any certain laws. It's only controlled by how we perceive it and what direction we want it to go in. Okay, so I know this might sound very kind of confusing and like, maybe I'm not even making sense, but consciousness really is this space where we don't have to really understand it. We just have to kind of trust in it. All right, and consciousness is this awareness that we have into our lives, this deeper awareness, our ability to kind of watch our thoughts and detach from them. So it's this idea that I am sitting here in my body in meditation, but I am detaching myself from the narratives and the stories and just experiencing myself as a three-dimensional being, understanding that I am not of, right? So this idea that we are not of the world, we are just in it. I am not my body, I am just in my body. My body is what sustains who I am, because I'm all the non-stuff between all of the atoms, between all of the muscles and all the things that make me who I am in this third dimension of existence. So our consciousness is this very esoteric part of who we are. And it's really where we're returning to. And so we don't really have to embody it and completely understand it in this world and in this life. Our purpose is not necessarily understanding consciousness. Our purpose is just kind of moving towards the space of consciousness and directing our thinking and directing our purpose toward these higher realms of being and understanding. Consciousness is found in our own stillness. It's found in meditation. That's where we can really feel it. It's this feeling of kind of euphoria and oneness, this remembering that we are a part of something much greater than just ourselves. It is bliss, it is light, it is joy, it is expansion. Consciousness returns us to this space of really understanding and embodying our true nature, that we are a spiritual force. We are light beings. We are only experiencing a small part of our capabilities, a small part of who we actually are in the grand scheme of the world. So when we feel inspired and when we feel connected to everything, the plants, the animals, nature, God, each other, this is conscious awareness. This is consciousness. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we hear a lot about this in people who have near-death experiences, who kind of get a taste of what is beyond. And I love how we're given this challenge of not really getting to know what happens behind, what happens across the waters of death. That is very unknown to us. And that's what makes life so beautiful and mysterious is, kind of getting back to this concept that I talked about yesterday of the hero's tale of we're born into this world as divine beings, remembering our true nature. And then through our lives, our faith in that is tested. And we forget our divinity. And the spiritual path is reclaiming this spiritual awareness of ourselves and returning to where we began, this cycle of samsara, of rebirth and death. And so, just I want to share too that in the world, especially in Indian philosophy and Hindu philosophy, we see a lot of talking about reincarnation and these cycles of death and rebirth. And many people, many spiritual mystics have claimed that the end goal of all of this is to ascend this cycle of death and rebirth, to kind of transcend our own karma, so that we don't have to keep on returning here and learning more lessons, that we get to kind of go back to this source that we all came from, which, I'm still learning about these things too. I'm not claiming that I know, what happens after we die or where we're all returning to, or even if reincarnation is real. These are just the things that, that give me hope and that make the most sense to me at this point in my own kind of path of spiritual uncovering, and, me just kind of trying to figure out what my purpose is here, and why we're all here and what we're doing. So if you're interested in tapping more into this spiritual space and more into a space of conscious awareness, I encourage you to practice meditation. And meditation can be very hard because in our society, we are not encouraged to sit still and just experience what is not, right? We're told to focus on what is. We're told to keep going, keep moving, keep creating, keep building, and we don't really hold this space for ourselves. So meditation is your portal to consciousness. And just start with 5 minutes. Start with 10 breaths if that's where, you feel most comfortable. And eventually, through practice, you gain progress and you start to move into spaces that feel more comfortable. And, I have even found in my meditations, I get to a certain place where I don't want to come out of my meditation. I'm like, this feels so good. Like, I just want to be here. And I love that. It's kind of like a runner's high or something, like the first few times you run, it totally sucks. Well, I think that every time you run, it sucks. I'm not a runner, but I have experienced runner's high before when I played, sports when I was younger. And I remember that feeling of euphoria when you finally kind of break through that wall or that barrier and you get to the other side. And that's really what happens in our meditation practice. We face walls within our mind or within our body. We become uncomfortable. We want to move and kind of disassociate and get out of it. But the more we're willing to be resilient and stay in the space of stillness, the more we can experience, and we'll eventually cross over that wall or climb over that wall or break through it. And we'll want to be there. We'll want to stay in that space. And, in this experience that we have in conscious awareness, I believe are kind of like the breadcrumbs that keep us, looking towards consciousness and looking towards, whatever it is that we experience after this life. We're given, the most hope and the most truth you'll be given on this earth, I believe, is when you sit still and close your eyes and move within yourself. That is the most truth that you will ever be given. And it may not have words, and you may not be able to clearly understand it, but the peace and the remembrance that you experience in your meditation and in conscious awareness just shifts everything. And the things that used to scare me maybe, and the things that I used to kind of get caught up in, really seem irrelevant after experiencing, different parts of my own conscious awareness. Okay, so check into the spiritual space every day. Like I said, even if it's only 5 minutes, I think 15 minutes is a really great goal for meditation, even 30 minutes. There's some really committed people out there that meditate for a few hours a day, even days at a time. I'm not saying that you need to do that to be connected to consciousness by any means, but don't set any limits on that either. And if, when is the best time to meditate? Well, it's believed in the Indian philosophy, which, I study a lot more than other philosophies as a yoga teacher. And I found a lot of spiritual wisdom in these philosophies. Of course, just like anything else, you have to comb through and choose what serves you and leave what doesn't. But there are some nice golden nuggets in the Indian philosophy. And one of those is that the spiritual hours here on earth are between the hours of 4 and 6 a.m. So if you're wondering what the best time to meditate is, it's within those hours. So right before sunrise, it's believed that the veil is the thinnest. We are most in touch and most in connection with the spirit world at that time. So that's why you see a lot of, yogis and stuff get up before the sun and spend time with God at that time. So definitely the morning time, or just, as soon as you wake up. I don't necessarily wake up before 6 a.m. to meditate, but when I do wake up, I try to make that the first thing that I do. Before I even turn on my phone or draw my tarot cards, really get my brain moving and thinking about the day, and I'll get into my morning routine. I'm going to talk about that during another Instagram live session. But for today, I just want to say that I roll out of bed, I go to the bathroom, I do a few Ayurvedic things like scraping my tongue, and then I get my warm lemon water, and then I sit down and I just sit. And sometimes I'm there for 15 minutes, sometimes I'm only there for 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes that turns into an hour-long yoga practice as well. But just taking that time to drop in really allows me to see the world from a different, more intuitive space. I feel this shift and I feel lighter throughout my day because I'm living my life from a place of conscious awareness. And then I'm able to tap into that all day long. So let's say I meditate in the morning, feeling good, move into my day, maybe go run some errands, and at a certain point I notice I'm like not taking deep breaths, maybe I'm in a rush, or I'm not really paying attention to what I'm doing. Because I've been practicing meditation, because I've been practicing all of these tools that we've talked about, I have that self-awareness to say, whoa, take a deep breath, slow down, tap back in. I close my eyes. Maybe I say a little prayer. Maybe I take a few deep breaths, and I feel myself return to that space that I found in my meditation that morning. So by meditating in the morning and kind of starting our day from this place of consciousness, I'm able to reconnect to it throughout my day. It's readily available to me. And I found that the more space I put between me and these moments of conscious awareness in my meditation, the harder it is for me to feel reconnected to it. Though I always find it again, even if it takes 2 or 3 sessions of sitting down in meditation and just feeling frustrated, eventually I break through those walls again and I rebuild that connection. And when you're meditating, look up towards your higher mind, activate this space, acknowledge it. When you're thinking, when you're creating, close your eyes, look up toward the higher mind, acknowledge that space, because then you are in alignment with it and you can create from a space of conscious awareness. So that's all I really want to say today about consciousness. There's still so much to be said about it, but hopefully that just kind of gives you an idea of where to start and how to interact with this space. And, and I've been saying this to a lot of people recently because there's a lot of information going around in the world right now. There are a lot of opinions, there are a lot of lies, and there are a lot of truths. And so I'm not here to tell you what to think or what to believe in. I'm simply here to share with you what I have learned and what I have, experienced. And from that, you have to shape your own beliefs and your own experiences and really find out what is true for you. Okay, and I love hearing your truths and hearing your experiences. So just know that, this space, this Instagram account, sacred as its own thing, is a safe and sacred space for us to all share and learn and grow together. So please share with me your journeys as you meditate and dive deeper into the chakras and into your spiritual practices. Okay, so thank you all so much for being here today with me and for tuning in this whole week. I do plan on offering more Instagram live topics, and I will keep you updated on that. So just kind of keep following my page. Make sure you're signed up for my newsletter. Those links are available in my link tree on my profile. Okay, thank you so much, friends. Namaste.